The Batman, the most anticipated DC live-action film of 2022, is now out. Directed by Matt Reeves, this begins a brand new Batman universe featuring a new take on the Caped Crusader, but really also an old take. What I mean by that is this. This is going to be my non-spoiler review for the video. This is for all of you, and you guys know when I do my reviews, it's no BS. And what I mean by an old take is that I think people who have been longtime fans of the Batman character are going to really find a lot to love about this film. This is from the mind of Matt Reeves, who helped create films like Cloverfield, which he did direct, Let Me In, and the last two Planet of the Apes movies that came out in the 2010s. Those movies really shaped up to be a great trilogy, and now he's back to start a new trilogy, or so they say, with the Batman. Robert Pattinson dons the cape and cowl to play the Caped Crusader, and he's got some pretty big shoes to fill, not just because of the fact that this is a legendary character that's been around for almost 100 years at this point, but also the fact that the character of Batman and Bruce Wayne have been played by so many well-beloved actors, and actually is still being played by them to this day. Don't forget that the Flash movie is coming out later this year, and it's going to have both Ben Affleck and Michael Keaton playing Bruce Wayne. So this is the first of three Bruce Waynes we're going to see in this 2022, this year, but it's not the first person to play Bruce Wayne. And there's all kinds of different iterations of the character, from the Adam West version to the countless animated voice actors to play him, and of course the ones I just mentioned, plus Val Kilmer, George Clooney, and Christian Bale. How would Robert Pattinson play to the Batman? Well, I thought he did a great job, but I think what really made the movie stand out for me, there was a couple things that made this movie really special. Number one, well, three things. There was three main things about this movie, without going into spoilers, that really made it special. Number one, I think, was the fact that it told from the perspective of Batman. He is the narrator. Robert Pattinson narrates the story, and you can tell it's a young Batman. It's based on year two of Batman. It's even said outright it's year two of Batman. And he's young, he's not experienced, he's not a grizzled veteran like the Ben Affleck Batman. He's still getting his shoes wet with being the hero of Gotham City. Number two, the script. The script for this film. Matt Reeves and Peter Craig put together a tremendous script. I don't think this movie, despite the great performances, I don't think this movie works without this incredible script. This movie should be nominated for Best Screenplay because there are so many times in this movie, and even though I knew about spoilers going in because I broke a lot of them here on this channel months ago, which, by the way, I was right again, but of course, you gotta throw that plug in there nonetheless. The film still managed to keep me guessing multiple times, and I was following along with the movie, following along with the clues, with the Batman trying to unravel this mystery. You know, the plot's relatively simple to start out with, then it starts getting quite, not really convoluted, but more complex with more characters as the story is ongoing. But Matt Reeves did a really great job of taking this script that he helped write and putting it on the big screen to where the people watching it, you don't get lost. Like, you really don't get lost watching this. And in some other movies that are kind of like this, where you have a sort of a crime murder mystery aspect going on, you can miss a detail. You can go to the bathroom, come back, and you might miss something important. Here, I didn't use the restroom, but there wasn't really too much that was not explained thoroughly in the film, or there wasn't much that wasn't at least told to us with through the dialogue and through the acting. Again, wonderful, wonderful script. And then number three is the music. I really enjoyed the music in this movie. We don't talk much about music when it comes to reviews. I've noticed that, not just me, but other guys on YouTube and girls, we don't talk about music that much. But the music in this movie, again, Michael Giacchino, excuse me, I thought he did a tremendous job with the soundtrack, because the soundtrack, it has that familiarity to where it sounds like a Batman film, and you're probably thinking, well, wait, they all sound different. He took little tiny aspects of the way that Danny Elfman does his score with the Hans Zimmer score from the Nolan trilogy, you feel little sort of inspirational tunes here. Like you have like the drums hitting in certain parts. You have sort of the Catwoman's I guess her theme, which sounds a lot like the Catwoman theme from Batman Returns. I can tell this guy was absolutely influenced by previous Batman films, but ultimately the movie's music does, definitely live on its own. Also, the cinematography of the film, Matt Reeves makes a beautiful movie here. Lots of blacks, but also lots of reds. You see the poster and you see all the promotional artwork for it having like a black and red sort of tone to it, and it's definitely there all throughout the film. And I think he gave it that look to kind of feel like a classic comic. And let me tell you, there is a lot to love here if you are a fan of the classic Batman comics. There are aspects both of Batman Year One and of Batman The Long Halloween that have been incorporated into this story, with obviously some character changes and things like that, but nothing that I felt was too offensive. It was all very respectful to not only the Batman comics, especially the Batman comics, but also the predecessor Batman films that came before it. Some people are going to say this tried to be like a Nolan film, and there are a lot of similarities between this and The Dark Knight. I'm already seeing that there's going to be debates about which movie's better, The Dark Knight or this one. And some folks are probably listening to this saying, wait a minute, you can't beat The Dark Knight. And it is hard to beat that movie. Unquestionable. This movie, there were certain themes and aspects of it, tones, that does feel like The Dark Knight, but Matt Reeves did it really differently, and in some ways it feels more like The Dark Knight Returns, the comics, which of course every Batman movie from 89 and onward were inspired by The Dark Knight Returns. So Frank Miller, you are a legend and always will be. One thing I gotta throw out there, big shout out to Paul Dano, his performance as the Riddler, who is a serial killer who feels like he has an obligation to tell the people of Gotham what's really going on behind the scenes. I thought his performance was chilling. There's one scene where Batman and Riddler have a confrontation near the end of the film, but it's not quite the end, and it's so chilling. Like this actor, I mean, he was definitely channeling some Heath Ledger vibes here as far as like being on the brink of insanity. I wouldn't be surprised if he didn't do some method acting here, because he really, and when I say method acting, I'm not saying that the dude actually killed anybody. That's not what I'm saying. But he definitely probably was alone in many nights reading the script trying to come up with this character, because he certainly played it really well. Robert Pattinson, which some are saying, Battinson, he was great as the young Bruce Wayne. I mean, I can't deny Andy Serkis is always great. Zoe Kravitz managed to be both sexy and confident. She showed vulnerability, but also a fierce aggression. Like, she was a great Catwoman. She's up there with, like, the Anne Hathaways and Michelle Pfeiffers. I mean, she is up there. Definitely a femme fatale, you know what I'm saying? I gotta also give it to Jeffrey Wright as commissioner. Well, he's not a commissioner yet, but maybe someday future Commissioner Gordon. Future Commissioner Gordon. James Gordon, tremendous job being Batman's, I don't want to say sidekick, but they do work together a lot in this film. And I gotta, of course, give it to Colin Farrell. You could not even tell it was Colin Farrell playing the Penguin. You could not even tell. You really couldn't. I mean, I knew going in because I knew, but it kind of reminded me of that one Tales from the Crypt episode with the fat guy, the one that Demi Moore has with the big fat guy who, She marries him because of a fortune teller. It's one of the great Tales from the Crypt classics. It was season 2, episode 1. Check it out if you haven't seen it yet. But great performances all throughout the movie. I mean, really, nobody was bad. Everybody did great. Also, John Turturro, great freaking character actor. I loved him. I mean, he's been in so many movies that I love. Do the Right Thing, of course. A real masterpiece. He's kind of become like the Al Pacino, but not Al Pacino in a way. He's a younger Al Pacino than the real Al Pacino. He was in Quiz Show. He was in The Big Lebowski. He was in Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? Just so many movies that I loved, and now he's great in this film. as Carmine Falcone. There's a lot of great acting, but I gotta tell you, man, the script, the movie has a real murder mystery aspect to it. It does bear similarities to the Dark Knight trilogy, but only because this is a serious, intense, and thought-provoking portrayal of Batman. It's not the campy Adam West or even the twisty trees fantasy, version that was the Tim Burton movies, even though that was dark as well and very well performed. This Batman feels like the one from the animated series, only younger. It's not a prequel to it, but it almost feels like it could be under different circumstances because, the Riddler in this movie is very different than the Riddler we've seen in the past. This is not Frank Gorshin, it's not Jim Carrey. This Riddler he was like the Unabomber. He was a totally different cat. And I like that they utilize, because, the Long Halloween, Batman Year 2, they're old stories, but they brought them into a modern perspective. We have cell phones and technology. We have bat tech, all kinds of cool stuff that they were able to utilize, including the Riddler. He has his own, dark web. The dark web is actually in this movie, very interestingly enough. They reference it. So he's got his own thing going on there, and there's a lot of little pieces to the puzzle and everything. Just a great, great time, yo. What a great fucking movie. I had a good time watching it. I think Batman fans are going to love this movie. I think that people who enjoy the Nolan movies are going to love this movie. Hell, if you like Batman, you're going to like this film. I mean, you're going to like it. You know what I mean? You're going to like it because it did the characters right, and everybody did great. I mean, great score, great script, great direction. It really is one of the best Batman films. I mean, probably my favorite since The Dark Knight. I don't know if it's... I love Dark Knight Rises. I love that movie. Moved me, and this movie did not move me as much as that movie did. But it's also, that one was the third part of a trilogy. It's the first part of a trilogy. So we'll see when we get to the third one of this trilogy if it does. But as far as filmmaking, a story, this movie is probably the best story since The Dark Knight, in my opinion, as far as solo Batman films go. What are your thoughts? If you saw it, I will drop my spoiler review later this week. Talk to you soon.